To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Brian Barney.
Hey, what's up, guys? Another episode of Eastmans Elevated here. So this week on the podcast, I have on Eastman's own Scott Reekers. So Scott has had a huge part over there at Eastman's and a huge part of this podcast. He's been my partner in this whole venture, and so we're just in constant communication, talking about, which guests are right, our content, and then when to release things, and just the overall direction of the podcast. So I thought it'd be really good to put the pressure on him and get him in front of the mic a little bit. So today our podcast is all about backcountry gear. Scott's the perfect guest for this. He's super knowledgeable when it comes to Western hunting, and in every fall he's going on these adventure hunts. But it's nice because our opinions kind of differ on which gear to use, and it's just different because of different needs. A lot of my hunts are during bow season, which is that early time of year where Scott hunts with the bow, but a lot of his adventure hunts take place, later during rifle season. Also. I'm a small guy. Gosh, I'm 5'7", 155 pounds. Scott's got to be just a hair under 7 foot. The guy's a giant, and he's in really good shape. He's just a big, tall guy. And then just our overall attitude on backcountry gear. And I'm just such a minimalist that sometimes my opinion isn't right for everybody because I'll be uncomfortable to be light. I just love being light in the backcountry. And so Scott's a good mix where, he likes to be comfortable and he likes to be light. And so just a really fun conversation back and forth about the gear we use and why we use it. Today's sponsor is Zamberlan Boots. So Zamberlan just makes a great set of boots. I've had a couple pairs of them that I really liked. And then I have a new pair coming of these mid-heights that should show up today or tomorrow that I'm really excited to put some miles on. And Zamberlan just does a great job of having their finger on the pulse of the market. And they're coming out with these mountaineering boots, but they've got a lot of these mid-height, lightweight hiking boots, which I just love. And Ike Eastman and then Brandon Mason of Eastman's, those guys have always used a full height boot until they found these new Zamberlans, and they found the Zamberlan mid-height lightweight boots, and you couldn't wrestle those boots off those guys. They love them. They're wearing them for absolutely every hunt from early season to late season, and so they're just in love with these Zamberlans. So I know they're going to be getting a new pair of these mid-heights as well. So give Zamberlan some love, and thanks to those guys for supporting the podcast. Over at Eastman's, we've got the new Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal episode or issue 101 coming out. So it's a great issue. I've got a bear article in there that I'm really proud of. I just love hunting spring black bears, in these western states. So I wrote an article for that. And then we've got a great pack review in there. So it's a pack review for a 3 to 5 day pack. So it's not a day pack, it's not a longer expedition 10-day pack, it's that 3 to 5 day range, and it's about trying to get your weight down, but still getting everything inside your pack, and then also, being able to pack out your game animal and that, but to do it with a lightweight pack. So the guys at Eastman's did a great job on that write-up. Make sure to check it out, issue 101 of the Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal. And with that, let's get this thing rolling. Eastman's Elevated, Scott Reekers, here we go.
Okay, I'm here with Scott Reekers at Eastman's. Scott is kind of my partner in the podcast, but he's just a diehard high country mule deer guy like me. So we wanted to get together and just talk over a lot of the gear we're using. We've had a ton of questions and comments about what type of gear we like and our preferences on things. And we're both knowledgeable guys, but our opinions kind of differ on the way we use our gear in the backcountry. So, Scott, how are you?
I'm good, Brian. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I bet you're looking forward to this season, getting after some mule deer.
Man, this winter's been rough, but I am looking forward to it. Last year, Brandon and I got to spend not as long as we had intended over in that GH area, because we're blessed to be residents in Wyoming, can hunt that every single year. But we got to spend a few days over there, and I found a buck that I've now got a personal battle going with because he's I'm pretty sure it's the same buck I found 2 years ago. So I'm hoping, like, when I found him 2 years ago, I think he was coming into his prime.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in his prime last year. So I'm really hoping he'll still be there again, barring somebody else shooting him or winter kill. But it's a really good area. If he's in the same spot, I have no idea how I'm going to kill him, because it's in a spot where he can literally see 360 degrees with just the turn of his head. And so I have to figure out how to outsmart him.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see. I mean, I know Mike in his book, Hunting High Country Mule Deer, he finally figured out how to take one. He was either 14 or 15 when he killed this big mule deer buck. I remember the story that it just took him years to do it, but I'm hoping I can kind of do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, in those areas, G and H, gosh, they're such great spots for high country mule deer. And us non-residents, we have to wait. Now the waiting's even getting longer and longer. But I love those units. But hunting G one year, I hunted it in 2008, and I chased a buck in there that I had scouted that was real close to 200 inches, but you could tell he wasn't that old. He was like a 4-year-old. And I found that buck, and I ended up harvesting a really nice buck. He was my second choice buck, this real big, deep fork buck. But I spotted that buck in 2008. I went back and hunted it in 2012, and I found the same buck scouting, and he was 220, 230, but he had all the same extras and inlines. Definitely the same buck, but that buck had to be 8 or 9 years old in 2012. So they die of old age in that place a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that some of that region, like, people get deceived because they read the elevation marks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they don't realize that there is some of it that is, like, Brandon called it the sweaty hand factor this year.
I got to hear this.
So what happened was we had this friend of Brandon's from when he worked with Game and Fish in North Dakota. Pat was his name. Pat was a great guy to hunt with. It's always an interesting experience when you bring somebody you've never hunted with before, especially on a backpack trip.
Oh, yeah.
I like to kind of break guys in easy before. But no, Pat was a tough dude. He could have kept going. Like, I was impressed with Pat. And so Brandon, he blew like 8 or 9 points because he'd just been saving, waiting for the right year. He hadn't even been applying, just buying points. And so he burned that to come hunt with us. And we found, in this particular area where we were at, we found 3 good bucks. The first night we were in there, we found this. If he had been a 4x4 on both sides, he'd have been a solid 180 buck, like 180 plus. His frame was a beautiful frame. And so then there's another buck that's just a real wide buck, laid out real wide in the back, deep forks in the back, but up front he's just this little crab clawed looking guy. And like, they weren't going to shoot that buck. I might have been tempted because what had happened was we had found out about a rainstorm. So we started heading from our glassing point, and I was going to go after the big buck. And if he was where he was the day before, I blew him out and didn't even know it, because he had figured out this whole country. And he could have seen me crossing the rock side, and I had no idea how close I was. Mm-hmm. And so, but we all 3 had to cross one area to split and go different directions. And Brandon, like, just stops on this deer trail, and it's in the type of deer trail where you carve out your footholds, where you stop, carve a foothold, stop, carve a foothold, stop, carve a foothold.
Steep, right?
Yeah, just you're looking down and you're like, I'm not stopping if I go. Yeah. Lord, please protect me.
All right.
And so Brandon, like, he pulled off his glove, looked at his hands, like, my hands are sweaty, we're turning back. And so we went up a little further and then kind of around. And so that's the sweaty hand test. If your hands start getting sweaty and you're not comfortable with how steep it is, then you probably got to just stop, just wait it out. And so that's the sweaty hand test for Brandon in the high country. And he's, I'm sure you guys talked about this in your podcast. The Badlands, he's got some steep spots. Badlands have steep spots because they slough off like crazy. Well, there's a lot of spots in G&H that slough off.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't do it with regularity like that river type country does. But when it sloughs off, it gets real steep, and you get these little 1-inch rocks that are just a pain to navigate around. But that's part of the allure, though.
It is, yeah. You're hunting them in that high country, gnarly stuff up there in the rocks and above tree line, and that is part of the allure is hunting them in that extreme country. You hunt them where you'd hunt goats or sheep, or and they're high country mule deer, and they're giants, and they're living up there. They're tough to kill, but they are up there.
Well, this spot, actually, it's a spot that you and I were comparing notes on when we went to lunch today. I found sheep before I found mule deer. We get to the spot where we're planning to camp, and we hear these rocks start sliding. And I was with Dalton, who's actually been a cameraman for both of us, and look up, and I'm like, that's not deer up there. That's like 10 or 12. Dude, that is sheep up there. That's a band of rams working that cliff.
Yeah.
And they had come down like this chute that had a whole bunch of snow in it, and they'd come down to get their drink, and they were heading across this cliff band and went clear over to this other open area, and lo and behold, we started finding mule deer like right below where the sheep were at. And I guess that's probably why they called mule deer, like high country mule deer, poor man's sheep hunt. I mean, and I may get a lot of flack for this, but I think I can honestly say that I would probably rather kill a 220-inch mule deer than a sheep.
Yep. I think they've got, I don't know. Yeah, and I'm going to say this wrong as well, but I just got a lot of respect for a big mule deer, and it's something that everybody can get a tag for. The tags aren't too tough to get, and everybody wants a giant mule deer, but not very many guys get it. They are really tough to kill, where sheep, not very many guys get the tags, and then they harvest sheep. But I'm with you. There is something special about a big mule deer. And yeah, there's been a lot of times where I find the deer living above the goats or above the sheep. They live in the gnarliest country you wouldn't even think. And a lot of good backcountry hunting for mule deer happens in that gnarly, steep country. What is the Sweaty Palms country? That's where a lot of them live.
And here's the crazy part about this. Like, I can think of, like, on one hand, the guys that I know of that effectively in this country here in Wyoming kill big mule deer on a consistent basis. And on a consistent basis, I mean every third or fourth year. And we're not, there are some freaks of nature out there who manage to get it done just about every single year on a big mule deer in general areas in Wyoming. Well, the reality is if you commit to killing big mule deer in those areas, you're going to go years without tags or years without filling your tag.
Absolutely.
It's just, and it's hard to set that standard because you want to validate your ability as a hunter by punching your tag. But a 165 type buck is not a 180 type buck. And it's really hard not to squeeze the trigger. And so, I mean, like, I guess my personal standard is, I'd like to kill a 180 buck or bigger, or something that's really unique, that is really, obviously an old aged buck. That's just really a solid buck. The older I get, the more I realize that, okay, I can live without killing something if I know that I hunted, a particular set of basins really well and know that I turned up every buck there. That means I outsmarted them. And that almost, to be a committed mule deer hunter, that almost has to be your mentality. And it's hard to do when, I'm not the type of guy who travels to multiple states all the time. I've got Wyoming. That's just the way my schedule allows. I've got, a little girl, one more on the way, and it's tough to be, don't get me wrong. I hunt more than the average guy. I shouldn't act like I don't hunt a lot, because I hunt a lot. But
you poor guy.
Yeah, I know. I shouldn't act like I don't.
No,
my wife would be here to tell you he hunts a lot.
She'd argue against you.
Yes.
No, but I'm with you though. Yeah. We've got to pick and choose what we can do and what we can fit in our schedule. And Wyoming is like enough. If I could hunt Wyoming backcountry every year, I don't know how many states I'd be traveling to. I mean, I like to travel around and hunt, but you've got a good area to hunt, and you can spend your time in a good area with good bucks.
Here's the crazy part. I drew a couple of good elk tags, and so last year was the first year I really got to spend some time mule deer hunting since I started working for Eastmans. And the craziest part about it was I drew these elk tags, and so being a mule deer nut, I go up scouting. Again, I was with Dalton, and we go scouting for elk. We find a 340 bull, but I found a 170 framed buck up there who had a dropper, like this like 8-inch dropper, and I was freaking out about that. And I got a 340-inch bull that's screaming his head off before the season opens, and I'm excited about the buck. And so I know, some people are like diehard elk guys, and I appreciate them because killing a big mature bull elk is a challenge.
It is, yeah.
It's like, especially when you get into like the general rifle seasons, or you get into like later in the year, that they're tough animals.
Oh, yeah.
It's, and so I have a lot of respect for those guys who kill mature bull elk year in and year out. But for me personally, what I decided to do several years ago was I want to be one of those guys that kills big mule deer. And so that for me in Wyoming, that meant backcountry. For me, it meant learning the backcountry. It meant learning maps. It meant learning how to read terrain where a buck could bed down. It meant learning how to be patient. Like I've never been diagnosed, but I'm positive I have ADHD. Like my mother has told me, Scott, you're so lucky you didn't grow up in today's age because you'd have been drugged. as much as you move around and do, you'd have been one of those kids that they definitely would have recommended for it. And so learning how to sit in glass and just be patient was something that took a lot of work and a lot of effort. But it was a commitment that was worth making. There's a lot that I learned from those situations and from growing through that.
For sure. We better start talking about gear. This is going to be a mule deer podcast, which is fine.
I'm okay with talking about mule deer all day long.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Well, yeah, so we've been getting a lot of questions about the gear we use and why we use it, and it's so important when we're hunting this high country. I mean, every ounce and every pound matters when you're traveling miles in that backcountry, so you want your stuff as light as you can get it. So I mean, I guess let's just start off with like your backcountry boots. What do you like for boots? Because you got to have something that you can trust, that isn't going to let you down. Blisters absolutely cripple you on a hunt. If you've got blisters on your feet or your feet aren't up to the challenge, it hurts every step. And so, what do you like for shoes or boots, or what's your common go-to?
When it comes to boots, fit is king. I mean, I know. Like a lot of guys here in the office have really started to gravitate towards the lightweight type boots, and I really respect that. But I also know, for me personally, and this is personal.
Yep.
It has, I don't want to. There is no one size fits all for everybody. Hence why there are multiple boot brands out there that people are like rabidly attached to because they found one that fits their foot. That is 90% of the battle, finding a boot model that fits your foot, whether it be the lightweight type or whether it be the full leather. Now, I broke my left ankle when I was in high school, and so it's just a mental thing with me that I am much more comfortable when I'm crossing a rock slide when I've got a full leather boot.
Okay.
It's just, and that's me. I know they're a little heavier, but I will find a way to lighten up somewhere else in order to have those boots that are a little heavier because I know that I trust my ankle more in that. And that's a personal thing. When you trust the gear you have, you are a lot more comfortable with that. And I really respect the guys who have tested the tar out of their gear and know what they trust and what they like. But I put enough miles on where I wear a set of boots out almost every year, if not every other year. I've got a set of boots that I was actually given when I started working here. The soles are flat. I mean, that's just the way that it works.
Yeah.
I wear boots out. They're a tool, and those boots fit fantastic. And I think fit is king. But I know you like the lightweight.
Oh yeah, so this is great because we're going to be so different ends of the spectrum, and it's great to get both opinions. But yeah, I'm super lightweight. Like I heard that adage. A pound on the foot is like 10 on your back. And so the lighter I could go with my boots, the more endurance my legs have. And I do so much trail running. And so when I'm trail running, I'm wearing tennis shoes. And when I'm working construction on roofs and steep roofs, boots just don't grip to a steep roof. You're not real agile and they're kind of clunky. And so I wear tennis shoes on the roof. And so I wear tennis shoes pretty much everything I do. So when I hunt the backcountry, I wear tennis shoes. I even go away from lightweight boots. I have no ankle support. But isn't it crazy? Yeah, but I trail run nonstop. I have really strong ankles, and I also like tennis shoes because I'm a bow hunter. And a bow hunter for sneaking up on animals. Now a lot of times you're taking off your shoes, but wool socks don't stick to the rocks and that steep stuff. You'll slide right off the mountain and be to the bottom. And there's some other things you can use, but I end up stocking a lot in my shoes. Yeah. I can feel the ground that I'm stocking on, and so for me, I mean, I like lightweight tennis shoes is what I love, and sometimes I'll wear a lightweight boot, but the last couple of years, I mean, it's been all tennis shoes everywhere I go, every mountain spot, as steep and gnarly as I can get into. So we're on different ends of the spectrum, but it's like whatever works for you out there, whatever you find that fits you well and works for you, that's what works. So I wear a waterproof tennis shoe is what I like to go in.
And I think part of that too is like the time of year. Like I said, I committed to be a mule deer hunter, and in doing that, my season starts September 15th. And it's really funny. Ike and I went on a backcountry hunt. He had his bow, and I had my rifle. We were going into a spot where 2 years before, a friend of mine had killed a 191-inch buck, and we had also seen a lot of big elk in there. Like it's a travel corridor, and so we said, okay, we're going to bring the bow and we're going to bring the rifle, and so Ike went in with a lightweight boot, and I went in with my my full leather, and we were both comfortable. And part of it was it is. With boots, it's about what's making sure you're comfortable, because nothing is worse than sitting in your tent after a long day of hiking in. We're not even talking the hunting. We're talking the hiking in, where you are patching up your feet. Like that is miserable.
That's the worst.
And it makes you, like, I personally believe, other than not eating enough like forcing yourself to eat enough calories in the backcountry, the number one thing that can really dampen you in the backcountry is your feet hurting. I personally believe that. Guy and I have talked about that. The feet hurting is something that really hampers you when you're doing that, and it's one of those that's kind of a consensus that if your feet hurt, you're not going to do anything.
No, you can't do anything. And if you get the wrong boots, or they've got too long of a break-in period, like I've had boots before that give you heel bite. Heel bite is the worst every time going up the hill. And if you are having problems with your fit or with your boot, stop right then and there and relace those things, different pair of socks, like make those things fit right. Because if you feel a sore spot, by the time you get to camp or get to where you're going, you've blown yourself up, and for the next week, it's going to hurt every step you take.
And then that actually brings up another point. How many pairs of socks do you bring?
Yeah, I try to make a pair last for 2 days. So if I'm going for 8 days, I'll go 4 pairs of socks.
Gotcha.
Yep. And sometimes I'll stop in a creek and wash a couple pairs. Okay. But I try to go minimum, maybe 4 to 5 pairs on an 8 day. What about you?
I will. Everybody's going to think I'm like the grossest human on the face of the planet. I will do 1 pair of socks that I'm wearing, and then 1 hanging in the tent.
Okay.
And that way they're getting dried out. I make sure I flip them inside out, so they dry from the inside out. Another thing that I do is at night I pull my sole liner out, because that dries it out. Like a lot of your moisture gets retained inside your boots, especially when you've got
from sweat and stuff, right?
It's amazing how much you sweat on your feet, and especially when me using the full leather liner. Well, if you pull that out of there, your boots are going to be dry in the morning, and your sweat also doesn't freeze overnight either. And so I'm not one of those. I know some guys will actually sleep in their sleeping bags with their boots on.
I've never heard of that one. That's wild.
It's crazy. I've read that on forums, places. I'm like, okay, I get why you would do that, so your boots don't get cold. But on the same level, I got to take my boots off.
I have to. There's no way I'm sleeping in my boots.
And so, but pulling those liners out will allow it to dry out.
That's a really good tip. Yeah, I don't practice that as much as I should. If they're soaking wet, or I got them wet during the day, then I'll pull them out. But that's a good tip just for every day to dry them out.
And it works really well. Like it works really well for, like, I woke up and I don't remember what year it was, but we were at about 10:08, and we had been rained on the entire way in. And so over the top of my boot toes, there was just this caked layer of ice, and I hadn't pulled my liners out. And so I'm sitting there with a tent stake inside the tent trying to chip off the ice off the toe of my boot because it had frozen solid. It's just water that had been retained and come through. And so that was a lesson, you know. It was one of those that, ouch, this hurts. You know, don't do stupid twice.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
So,
no, you got to learn your lesson, don't you, when Mother Nature teaches you. No, that's awesome. Well, that's, like you say, that's two different opinions about boots, which way to go, but that's a good tip to pull your soles out and dry them off. So we got boots covered. Like, what kind of layers are you bringing in? And maybe, you know, we do kind of hunt different seasons because I am bow only, so I'm most of the time, you know, early September, but then I'll hunt elk in late September and October, and then I hunt rut and mule deer in November. And so, you know, it kind of differs from season, but I pretty much got the same set of clothing that I'll pack in. What do you bring in for your clothing? You 2 pairs of socks, which is crazy. You can get by on 2 pairs. That's pretty good. And if I could make that work, I would. But it just takes me. I don't know why I need more. I think I maybe soak them a little bit more, or maybe I've just got really sticky feet and I just can't stand myself after a couple days, or I feel like I'm going to get athlete's foot on them. That's something I'm always trying to watch out for. But that's really good. You can get by on 2 pairs of socks. That's a minimalist attitude. That's what I like.
I think another piece of the equation is you use the word adventure hunting a lot, and I really like that. Like, I like that word choice. But in a lot of the hunts that I know, since you and I've been communicating since I started working here, you've talked a lot about 10 days, like or longer. A lot of my hunts are I will pick 1 week during mule deer season. That is my week, like 7 days, and usually there will be 1 day during that hunt, even in the high country, like staying in the high country. I won't hunt as hard because you just need a break sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so I think one of the differences is a lot of mine are shorter hunts.
Okay.
I would probably bring along more socks if I were doing as long as you do. But I get it though. You're coming from Montana heading to I know you've been to Nevada, and we were just talking about Colorado, right?
About every western state I've hunted in. Yep.
And so that's one of those things. I think that may be part of the difference in philosophy. You've got X number of days to get this done, and so you're traveling a lot further distances. So just a difference in place as to what dictates that. So I think that might be one piece. But back to clothing. I never leave home without rain gear. I only went cheap on rain gear once.
Do you bring rain pants in as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I bring the rain pants. Here's my justification for that. They break wind. And so a lot of the areas in particularly western Wyoming, you're sitting behind a rock, hoping a rock is going to be enough of a windbreak, and so if your legs are sticking out to the side a lot, and so it's really easy to pull on your rain pants, and especially with a lot of this rain gear that's out now that breathes so well, that does just a quality job. You're not going to find yourself sitting there sweaty or anything of that nature. It's going to break the wind and keep you warm. And so I will always have my rain gear, and in fact, I will forgo a soft shell layer, and I will bring just the rain gear along to make that work, because that functions the same way. And then I will bring an insulation layer for my top. I'm a big proponent of down. I really like down, and with a lot of the like silver lined down or treated down that's out there right now, it's really pretty fantastic. Then the next piece is I will top. It's usually like about 4 layers. So I'll have a base layer and then some type of I don't want to call it a jacket, but something that's kind of over the top of the base layer.
Over top the base layer, like a fleece or a hooded sweatshirt or a soft shell jacket or something like that.
The soft shell I tend not to bring because they're a little heavier.
Yep.
And so like what I brought this year was just a polyjean hoodie.
Okay.
That functioned really great for what I was for what I needed.
Yep.
And the best part about that is you can actually take your base layer off. Sometimes you get too warm and keep that like that hoodie stayed on. It was enough warmth while I was around camp, moving around a bunch.
Yep.
For a couple hours in the afternoon. Well, I should say afternoon is that 11:30 to about 1:30 window where there's really no deer movement for you to be watching. That time and space is when I would take a layer or two off and get things dried out if need be. But those are my top layers. On bottom, I'll do I'll have obviously pants of some type, but I like a pant that has a knee pad of some type or a place to put that in, just because where we do a lot of hunting, there's a lot of small rocks. That's really annoying when you kneel down to not have something that you can put a knee pad in if you want it. And then I like the ones that have just some type of water resistance on the butt. It's the Wyoming range in particular is notorious for its 2 o'clock in the afternoon storms, and you don't always pull on your full set of rain gear, but you do sit down, and if you happen to sit down in some wet grass, there's nothing more annoying than realizing that your whole hind end is wet, and it's just
wet butt all day.
Exactly. And that's the hardest spot to dry. I mean, seriously, how are you going to dry it out?
When it soaks through to your underwear too, and then you're just soaked. Yeah, you're miserable for sure. Yep. So we're really similar in our layers. I do not bring a rain pant in, and I've considered it at times, but I go with like a quick drying pant, lightweight pant that just dries really quick if I get it wet. And usually if it's a storm, I'm hunkering up, always have a rain jacket, would never leave home anywhere without my rain jacket, but I can kind of throw it over my pants, over my knees, and kind of cover myself if I'm riding out a storm or something like that. And then the quick drying, if there's dew on the grass, it's dry within a half an hour of being out there. So I wear the quick drying pants. I run one set of long johns on my bottoms no matter what I'm doing. And usually I like the new ones that zip off. Have you seen these where you don't got to pull your pants all the way off? You just pull them down to your ankles, and then they zip down the sides, and then your long johns are off. So it's sweet. You don't got to take off your shoes and take off all your stuff to pull your long johns off when you start sweating, so you can wear it in the morning. And so I wear those 2 layers on the bottom. On the top, I usually bring in 2 shirts, and they're usually 2 Smart Wool t-shirts. That's what I'll wear as my base. And then I bring something a little bit different that most guys don't bring, is I bring a sun hoodie. That sun is so intense in that high country that you'll scorch your ears or your face or the back of your hands. And so the sun hoodie is really lightweight, but it's got a hood that comes over that'll block you from the sun, and you can wear it in the heat, and it'll also block the backs of your hands when you're glassing so you don't get burnt. And then I bring in 1 hoodie, usually like some sort of synthetic hoodie that I wear everywhere around, and then 1 down coat, like you say. I love the down coats, and then my rain jacket, and that's pretty much my upper shell. Ball cap, I used to bring like an ear cap, but I just use my hoods nowadays, and I use a down with a hood so I can kind of hood up. I've had thoughts about using like a down pant for glassing that I could zip on, or like you use your rain pants, you use those as a wind blocker and kind of a warmth to your legs. I wouldn't mind doing something like that. So I'm going to look into either a down pant or bringing in a rain pant in, but we run pretty close to the same system.
This is weird. I haven't used it as much the last couple of years, but I did find a lot of value. It's a bandana. It's orange bandana that I use, because obviously Wyoming, you have to have orange during a lot of the rifle seasons that I hunt. And so I can use it around my neck, and it is cotton. Like I'll be honest on that. But on something like a bandana, cotton isn't going to kill you on a bandana.
No.
But it also does function as like, pull it up over my mouth and over my nose if I'm sitting there. I can put it over my ears, like around my ears if I needed to, for a little extra layer. It was just one of those little handy pieces that worked really well.
Yes.
I'll flat admit that I stole it from the cowboy world. I always wondered why they wore those around their neck when they're riding, and it's pretty obvious. It was just a quick, practical place to put something that I could put over their mouth, and for a backcountry hunter, it just functioned really well as a tool that was added to the arsenal. Plus, it was also a piece of orange that say I lost my hat. It was always a second piece of orange that I had that really, it was ounces. So that was just I'll consider that part of my clothing, but something that was I'll admit it looks goofy when you wrap it around your head, and take pictures in it. In fact, another staff writer may or may not have teased me about it quite a bit when I had it over the top of one of my hats. But it's one of those that function always beats how you look.
Yes, for sure.
When you're in the backcountry.
Yep. No, I'm the same way. I brought on a lot of hunts. The neck gaiter, the really lightweight, breathable neck gaiter, the same thing where you can pull over your face, pull over your ears, and cover your face from the sun, or you can you can use it for so many different things, But yeah, I'll run that as well. That is a good tool to have.
So, what is the worst sunburn you've ever gotten in the backcountry?
Oh my gosh. I sunburnt the back of my hands one time in the 13,000 feet of Colorado.
Okay.
And my hands were so red and peeling and almost blistered. And it all happened in one day. That sun is so intense up there. And you don't realize, like I work outside all summer long, but at 5,000 feet in elevation, you go to 13,000 feet and pretty soon you've sunburnt your ears, the back of your hands, your nose. And so I've gotten my face and I've gotten my ears a little bit, but never too awful. But the worst one I can remember is the back of my hand. What about you? Have you been sunburnt in the backcountry?
All right, so funny story. We same year that my buddy killed that 190-inch buck, same hunt. We're sitting on a ridge line, like feet literally hanging off a cliff while we're glassing, looking into some of these different pockets really far away because we didn't think the deer was close. And it got so warm sitting there that we all sat there, took off shirts, and a bunch of different things. Like, we're sitting there, we've got our feet drying out. This is great. 65 degrees up here in the high country, and all our stuff's going to be dry, no more sweat. Well, look down at my shoulders, and I'm like, this isn't good. Put the base layer back on, but even then I ended up like the top of my forearm, because I'd been sitting there glassing. So into the sun, the top of my forearm had this big red splotch on it that hurt. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty ridiculous. So normally I've got my sleeves rolled up most of the time when it gets warm in the afternoon. Well, I had to keep my base layer down all the way to my hands and gloves on because I had a sunburn. It's the weirdest thing, but your clothing makes a difference in that.
Isn't it? And you burn so quick in that high country. You don't think about it, but you could be out in an hour in it, and all of a sudden you're sunburned. Yep. No, you got to, and the higher you get, like in Colorado, in the 13,000 foot stuff, you burn so quick up there, you just get crispy.
I burned pretty quick on, it was in some of this region here, like close to Powell, where we were at, I think 11.5.
Oh, that's high. Yeah, that's up there.
And so we were in that vicinity, and I got burned pretty good there too. But that one wasn't like so much my own fault or ignorance. That one was more or less just a situation where we had to stay put because we knew where the travel routes were on the bulls, and we went in trying to kill my bull with a bow, and we just stopped because we had 2 days to rifle season. It was a literal rut fest, and so we were like, hey, we can kill a really big bull with a rifle in 2 days, so we're just gonna wait this out. So I had the same bull I had at 80 yards for like 20 minutes. It was the same bull that I ended up killing with my rifle. It was pretty cool how that played out. But in sitting there all day, I got sunburned. It's how it works.
It is just how it works. Sometimes you're sitting out a buck or a bull, and you're just out in the wide open, and there's nothing to hide behind. So that's where that sun hoodie just pays dividends. And so I use it on the river a bunch. I use it in construction work where I just anymore, I just try to keep the cancer off me. When you're out in the sun every single day, if you're getting exposed to it nonstop, like you're exposing yourself to a lot of bad things, for the future. And I want to be able to hunt till I'm, old and gray. So I cover up, but that sun hoodie, it does wonders for me. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I know we were kind of talking about this before. So how do you filter your water?
Yeah. So we were talking about this, and so there's a bunch of different ways to go, and I've tried about everything out there. So the iodine, it works. It definitely gets rid of all the bugs. You've got to wait a little bit when you put the iodine in it, so you've got to be patient with your water. But boy, it just tastes horrible. I hate the taste of iodine water. So I kind of got away from that. I used the pumps for years, and now some pumps are better than others. Now, I've used the pumps where I'm really pumping out of some bad places. The pumps So the good part I found about the pumps is you can pull water out of small little streams
Yes.
and small little places where you can't dip your bottle in.
Mm-hmm.
It'll pull the water out, but you have to be careful that it doesn't clog it.
Yeah.
It'll clog your filter if you're pulling sand through
Yes.
it or pulling dirt or debris or pulling dirty water. Now, I did catch Giardia through using a pump, and I caught Giardia and didn't really know what I had for a while, so it took me a while to actually go see the doctor, but eventually I found out that I had Giardia. I wasn't dying. So I knew I had used the pump everywhere,
Yeah.
and I just didn't even think. I had never had any waterborne illnesses, and but yeah, I caught Giardia through a pump. So now I'm using the UV light system, and that system seems to be, it's really, really effective. It just takes, I would say the downfall is you got to find a place to get your bottle in and to fill your bottle. But it is like 99.8% effective of killing everything in the water. And the other downside is if you're doing a lot of water for you and a buddy, it takes a minute with a 32-ounce bottle of stirring it around before it's disinfected. Now you can drink it after a minute, then it's good to go. So that's kind of what I'm using now. It's light, but you're counting on batteries and you're counting on a mechanical device. So I too have iodine as a backup to where I carry a handful of pills just in case if that thing ever dies on me. Now, you like the pumps.
I got accustomed to several spots really where there just wasn't a lot of water, and so there wasn't a lot of running water that you could filter from. I love hunting mule deer, but I mean I've killed a lot of elk, and in one particular spot where I've killed a lot of elk, there's just this nasty pond, and once the cattle have been moved out of this area, like that should be your cue.
That is your cue. Yeah, that's
nasty stuff. I bought a filter that had two parts, like it was a two-part filter. So you've got the it's like a sand that filters as well as your regular charcoal filter. So it's a two-part because of what you were talking about. Like I tried filtering that with actually another Dalton story where Dalton, same guy that done camera work for Brian, he and I were filtering in the spot, and the water was so gross that it came through his filter and was still gray. It was disgusting. And so, we've got him pumping water into this 32-ounce Nalgene, and from that Nalgene, I'm filtering water into my bladder.
Okay.
So we had this two-part system. I was like, they make pumps that already do this. Why reinvent the wheel? So I bought that filter, and I really trust that because like I said, I've used some.
If you're pumping it out of that cattle trough that you're talking about, and you haven't caught anything yet, you're doing okay.
It's not a trough; it's a cattle marsh.
Oh no,
it's disgusting. It's probably the sketchiest place that you could get water in this area. However, it's a spot where you can kind of coyote out on elk really well, and so we did that, and I used iodine for a long time, and I tried it one trip where just going to use the iodine drops with the taste filter drops that you can get rid of. You're supposed to be able to get rid of the iodine taste. There's still a little bit of it there. But the issue I ran into with that was I don't like chewing my water. I just don't like chewing the water. So yes, like that bandana I talked about, that's another way where you can get a lot of the crud out, where you can just put it over the top of your bottle. But I discovered that the pump for me in those areas that have just very little water, that's the easiest way to get that. With a little bit of work, you can make a puddle bigger too.
Yes, I've done that a bunch of times too. Yeah.
And so that for me, and the area that I like to hunt and that I go to a lot, that's what's effective. But there's a lot of other places out there where it's just terrible, man, where you need it to be as light as possible. I've not used the light. I've just and the reason for it was like the chewing the water thing. I'm just
gotcha. You want cleaner water when you start drinking it. Yeah, no, I don't blame you a bit. That's a good point. And I would use either or. I just kind of went to this light, and it's been working for me, and so I've been using it. But yeah, you're right. The pump does clean up the water, but a lot of times through that pump, it's still got the nasty taste through it if you're filtering nasty water. But it does clean it up quite a bit. You're right about that.
So that's my
Yep.
That's my philosophy. So I have another question for you because we've never, like you said, you and I've never gotten to talk shop on some of this. So what do you use for hauling a lot of water?
So I use, I've got a hydration bladder that I use, a 100-ounce hydration bladder, and then I bring two 32-ounce Nalgene's or bottles. Usually I run 164 ounces, unless it's a specific spot that I know of where I've got to bring, 100, and then I'll bring a 50-ounce water bladder and then bring the bottles. But usually I can get away with about 164. So what do you use?
I've got from. It was really funny how this worked out. I was running a 3-liter bottle, and I was going through water like crazy. Like I really liked this 3-liter bottle.
And 3-liter would be like 100 ounces, right?
Yeah. Yep. And so I go through water like crazy. But I mean, I'm 6'5", 235. So I mean,
yeah, right.
It's one of those like big dude eat and drink a lot. Well, the next piece that I started looking at, I was like, okay, there's got to be bigger water carrying systems, and I found and this is dependent on the hunt, but I found a 6-liter bottle and I found a 10-liter bottle.
Oh, wow.
And so in spots where I know there's not going to be a lot of water, I'll bring that 10-liter bottle and I will wait till the absolute last point to fill up that I know where there's water.
Yep.
Sometimes you're lucky and that's only 500 feet from your camp and glassing spot, or sometimes it's 2 miles and 3,000 vertical feet. So
sounds familiar. Yep.
You just deal with it. And so I'll use that 10-liter for the longer trip.
Does the 10-liter have like a handle on it or something you can carry?
It's an MSR drone dairy bag is what it's called. And so that thing is tough as nails, like just the way that it's constructed. It's actually Cordura that's like got a lining in it that holds the water in. But there's it's almost like a shoestring that goes around the edge. And so what I'll do is I'll take my optics on one side and weight my pack on that side, then I'll put that heavy load of the water on the other. So so I'll have heavy on both sides to balance out the pack weight, and then that 10 liters is there, and I've got it for 10 liters will last me 3.5 days, like by myself. Like if I've got buddies with me, the 10 liters not even a question because we can take turns carrying it. And so that's just my my personal philosophy. I know if you're camping close to water, man, I just bring a few Nalgene's. That's just a safe weight. But when you don't know what water is going to be there, I'll bring the big thing.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, and I can get by on the like you say, you're a big guy, you need a lot of water. I'm a small guy, I don't need much. I'm like 5'7", 150, and I've told guys before that I can go on 32 ounces a day, and that's bare minimum, but I can make it on 50 ounces a day. So my 164 ounces, that's like 3 days worth of water for me. So carrying that same system, and just like you said, filling up at the last place, making water runs. But that's crazy. What a great tip for big guys or guys that need a lot of water. Not even big guys. I mean, you're a fit guy, but like you say, you're 6'5", you're a giant, But so 10 liters, it's 2 pounds per liter. That's 20 pounds of water.
Oh yeah. It's brutal when you choose to use it, but the best part is that if there's a mule deer, like a particular mule deer that you're hunting, and you can take and set up in his area, you don't need water again. And the other piece is you don't have to fill it up with all 10 liters. You can stop a little ways before, or 6 liters, or I've also got a 6-liter drone dairy bag, and that thing works pretty well most of the time for overnighters. That's the bladder that's in my pack.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a good tip. It'd be good to be able to haul that much water because, like you say, when you get 10 liters back to the spot you're hunting, you're feeling pretty good about life. You got enough water to survive, cook your dinner at night, drink as much as you want, which is really important in the high country, too, is to drink enough and keep yourself hydrated so you can keep pushing hard. But, yeah, that's a good tip for carrying water.
Have you ever used the drops?
No, I haven't.
Part A, Part B. I like them. But there's a waiting time, just like the dye or the iodine. So if you're needing water right away, I've been known with the pump just looking straight up to my mouth and start pumping if I've run out of water. Yeah. So that's happened on occasion.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing worse than being thirsty, is there?
Miserable.
It is miserable. Yep. And dangerous too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know for sure, but there was one, and it was kind of a trip that surprised me. I was on horseback where I must have sweat more while we were riding in than I realized. And so it took me a long time to get caught up energy level wise because of I was dehydrated. I didn't realize it, but you can't just slam water back and instantly feel good. It takes your body a while to get there. And so the guy I was with, he was pretty gracious. I was like, take your time. You'll be all right. Let's sit here and just drink. And so I finally got a liter down, but it took me an hour of sitting there just to get a liter down. I realized, okay, I was a little dehydrated. And it's going to be dangerous. It can make things hairy real quick if you're not aware that you got into that situation.
Yeah, and that's where I know my body real well from all my trail running. And I go on 12-mile runs and I won't bring any water. I'll just go and then I'll make it back to the track. So I really keep a good monitor of my body. But you're right, that is super important in the backcountry, is making sure that you're hydrated and also just to optimize your performance as well. If you're living off bare minimum water, you just can't push as hard. You start running low on energy, and that isn't even being dehydrated where you start feeling as bad as you did in that scenario, So, that is important. So we've covered a couple things here. What about your shelter and sleeping system? So this is a big one, and they're all different types of seasons, but what's your favorite sleeping system?
A while back, Guy and I did a back and forth article where he argued for floored shelters and I argued for floorless. So it was kind of fun. It was a little bit of banter back and forth. Like I wrote my piece, then he wrote his, then I wrote mine. So back and forth, like replying back and forth to each other. So it was fun to hear the other philosophies. And for the record, neither of us are like for or against. We were just arguing the pros, the pros and cons of both. I typically use, especially when I want to be fast and mobile, I typically use a floorless shelter. And by the time that my season has come around, most of the bugs are dead. There could be a mouse, but let's be honest here. Can a mouse chew through tent material? Yeah, it can. And it usually will if you leave your food in there. The majority of the places I hunt, we have to hang our food for bears anyway, so that usually won't be a concern. So I like the floorless shelter, but you have to be even more aware of where you're putting it than when you do just a shelter that has a floor. So, but that's my preference. The lightweight ones that have come around recently, they're ridiculous. We're talking, sub 3, sub 2 pounds on a lot of these ones, and it's just crazy things that you never thought would come around, but a lot of them are built around the center pole, and so with the center pole, they shed wind. So, that's just my personal preference.
And you got to give something up to get that lightweight, and you got to give up some comfort to get that lightweight. But as long as you can deal with that, it works out okay. But I used the floorless shelters for a while. I've used the bivy sacks. I go with like a bivy tent style, and it's a single wall design, but it's a bathtub floor. You have to manage your condensation a little bit tougher to set up. But like you say, they've come light years in the design. Now this bivy tent I have weighs 1.5 pounds, and it withstands a lot of weather. You can withstand a snowstorm, rainstorm, get in it. I just like the floor for, like you say, the mice. I hunt this one spot in central Montana that the spiders are huge. They're tarantulas. They're tarantula spiders that crawl around on the ground, and they come out at night. You can see their eyes with your headlamp, but they're honestly like as big as your hand, and they crawl around. Like, that freaked me out. I'm good. I'll just put a floor in there, and I won't have to worry about those things crawling on me at night. So I go with a floored shelter, but I'm like you. We think a lot alike. We're both using like a minimalist style shelter where you are giving up a little bit. The 3-season tents, you can get into a good one of those for 2-3 pounds for a single man. Get a double wall design, which will withstand a little bit more, get rid of a little bit more condensation. But just for me, I'm always trying to cut every pound out, and so I like that minimalist. I call it bivy tent is what I call it, but I like those things. But we're along the same lines on those.
And I like, once it gets past about October 5th, there was one year that, this is when I was first really getting into backpack hunting, and I was bound and determined to go kill one of the mule deer I had seen while I was on a elk bow hunt. And I got in there, and it dumped 6 inches of snow on me as I'm hiking in. And I was so young and stupid on this trip.
We all are when we're young. You got to learn the hard way.
Yeah. My dad asked me before I left, like, so you sure you're prepared for this? If you had listened to the forecast, I was like, oh yeah, I got my rain gear. I'm good. And so I backpacked in, and it was only about 3.5 miles that I backpacked in, but I'd seen some good deer in this area, and I thought, okay, it's open for rifle, and they'll still be in there. And they were still in there. I just botched my shot opportunity. But I got dumped on 6 inches of snow on the way in, and my tent was it was a double wall floored. El Cheapo, but where I had the wherewithal to pitch it in a good spot, and I was warm enough inside that thing. Although I did have a down sleeping bag, so it was kind of getting into sleep systems. I had my down sleeping bag, which worked really well. I really appreciated that. But it was one of those situations where your shelter matters. You don't realize how much your shelter matters, and so that double wall was nice in that later season.
Yes,
there was a lot of condensation from the snow.
Yep,
because it warmed up the next day and it got humid out, and the snow was there. The deer were not. I'd blown them out of the country, but they. But I learned a lot that trip about my gear and my gear choices. I learned a lot about the value of I did something right. I brought gaiters along.
So that's a big one. Yeah.
But I was like, okay, these things are worth their weight in gold. And then just some of those things that with the shelter, I would highly recommend everybody try.
Yes.
Try something, but try it on a trip where you're not banking on killing your trophy.
Experience is the best teacher. Yep. And if I'm just going for a 2-day scout, I can get away with a bivy sack because I'm only up there for a couple days, and I can just sleep wherever I end up, and then my bivy sack is less than a pound. But yeah, no, you're right. Experience is the best teacher. Get out, try whatever you're going to use, set it up, live in it in some harsh conditions or real life conditions. And that'll be your teacher there of what you need to go to. And everybody's different. We're not saying our answer is right and theirs is wrong. Everybody's just got this different line they have to draw between comfort and between weight and what's worth it to them. And I hunt with a lot of guys that no, I'm not going with your cheap-ass tent. I'm going with a real thing, I'm going with a 3-season or a 4-season, and I'm going to have a shelter. So when that gnarly weather comes in, I'm going to be fat and happy in my tent, And so everybody's got their own way of looking at things, and none of it's wrong or right. This is just our philosophy on it.
And the, mental, whatever makes you mentally stable while you're hunting in the backcountry is huge.
That's so huge.
Whether that's having a shelter that weighs a little bit more, but you look forward to spending your night in there, or whether it's spending that extra couple $100 on your boots to feel like, okay, my feet are going to be in the best condition possible, because when you feel like you can conquer the world because you trust your gear, you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just, and I think that's why a lot of people spend so much money on their gear, self-included.
Yep.
That it may not make you no piece of gear is going to make you instantly find a mule deer. Okay, but it will make you more comfortable while you're looking, which can make you more effective.
Yeah, well, and if you get broken mentally, your hunt's over.
Yep.
If you give up when inside your own mind, the hunt's over, and Mother Nature is going to try to break you up there. She's going to throw everything she's got at you, and so you've got to be able to survive up there with your clothing system and with your shelter, and be able to trust it that you can keep yourself safe. You can keep yourself comfortable, so you can keep staying up there to hunt those deer, hunt those elk. So no, you're totally right. It's a big mental game, and you get more comfortable the more time you spend in the mountains, the more conditions you go through, the storms you ride out. You build confidence, and you can ride those things out. You know how to take care of yourself. If one of your gear pieces get wet, you know how to stick it inside your sleeping bag or underneath your mattress, in between your mattress and your sleeping bag. You know how to dry things out and keep yourself safe up there. So you're right. The mental game is such a big part of it.
And I think kind of what I was getting at is with the tent, you want to have a place where you're comfortable and come back to, no matter what. Yes, you may be able to do minimalist type things, but if you're not comfortable in there, you're not going to be good. And so, like I said, I use a down sleeping bag because I trust the warmth of down, and so my sleeping bag has a lining on it that prevents it from getting wet. I know down can turn to mush when it gets wet, so but their treated down options are out there.
Yep, and you got to just keep that thing dry. That is your warmth. That is your survival. Is make sure that bag's dry. So I always carry my bag in a dry bag.
Yeah.
So it can't get wet inside my pack. It's always in a dry place, and even if the tent gets my tent stay pretty dry or whatever, but I'll even shove that in my dry proof bag during the day while I'm out. Yeah. And just to make sure that I'm not getting that thing wet at all, just to keep it safe. But what temperature do you go with your bag?
20.
20. That's a good temperature.
I've never gotten cold in the particular bag I'm using right now. I know some guys get a little cold, sometimes at 20.
Yep.
But again, if you're willing to haul in the extra weight out of a 10-degree bag.
Yep.
Do it.
Yep.
But if getting cold at night is something that happens to you on a regular basis, man, do it.
Well, and there's ways you can cheat that too. And I've got a bunch of different bags that I use. So I've got, a 30 degree that I'll use on my early season stuff. And then I tend to go to my 15 degree for most of my stuff, like during the seasons you're talking about. Once it gets to September 1st, if I'm way up in Colorado or something, I'm bringing my 15 degree. And it's a super lightweight one down bag that I trust, that I know, that I like. But then I can cheat my temperature by wearing clothes to bed. I can shove my down jacket in the bottom to keep my feet warm, because my feet are the first thing that get cold. So I'll shove my down way in the bottom and kind of wrap my feet in it there. So I can cheat that temperature degree, but pretty much that temperature degree, and it depends on the quality of the bag, but it's usually, that's not a comfort rating. Like 15 degrees is not where you're comfortable. If it gets 15 degrees, I'm getting cold in that bag. That is usually like 10 degrees above. So like 25 degrees, I'm comfortable in that bag. Anything less than that, I'm starting to go on the edge. And you can survive 15 degree, but you're not gonna be happy in there. Where you need to wear clothes to bed and shove your down in your footbed and that. But we use about the same gear. And then I'll use my 30 degree for really early season stuff. Like Nevada opens August 10th. I'll run my 30 degree bag because it's 40 degrees when you're sleeping up in there.
And I've got a quilt that I use for like the early season, like in July and August.
Oh, wow.
So it's a pretty cool. It's a synthetic quilt that it's like, I'll actually bring it along on late season elk hunts, even when I've got my bag, because I'll bring that along for just sitting there glassing. You can sit under it.
Oh, that would be so nice.
It's really nice, and as little as it weighs, it's one of those mental sanity things that it makes you feel better about yourself and your conditions. But I'll use that during the summer pretty regularly. Then, but your sleeping bag doesn't matter if you don't have a pad.
That's so true. Don't skimp on a pad. I'm a minimalist. There's no way I'm going anywhere without a pad. And I run a big pad. I'll pack more weight to run a comfortable pad. Because I spend so many nights in the woods that if I'm not getting a good night's sleep, I'm not hunting effectively and I don't feel right that next day. And if I skimp on my pad or it's too thin, I'll roll and my hips and my shoulders will get sore in the night. I'll wake up 10 times during the night and I'm just not getting a good night's sleep. And so right now I'm running a pad that actually blows up on two different sides. So it's about 2 inches thick. And it's got an R5 insulating value rating. I like to go with like an R4, R5 because it insulates you from that ground and keeps you warmer, keeps your bag warmer, the whole deal. But I love a good pad. I always run a good pad.
I've had a 4-season pad and a 3-season. I've never gotten cold on the 3-season. On the 4-season, though, in some of the September hunts, like I actually started sweating. It was too warm. So that was one change I did make, because I thought, okay, I'm going to get cold. This is just going to be a hunt where you get cold, you see the forecast kind of thing. And that 4-season was just a little too much for a couple of those hunts, but the 3-season was about perfect for a lot of those. But that's just, again, what's your body type?
Yep.
Like what do you, and some of that you just have to go out and sleep in the backyard when it's cold.
And when was in my 20s, I could make do with a little,
Yeah.
I'd go as light as I can because I'm a minimalist, and I'd sleep and I'd be fine. I hunted, but yeah, as the years go on, it's just comfort is so important to me when you're sleeping.
I believe that word is called wisdom. So some of the stuff that I did, like when I was, in my 20s before I was married, I'm like, man, what were you thinking?
Oh, I know. I'm surprised I made it through it.
Like, you show people the places that you went or where, what your buddy saw, and you're like, dude, you went over there? Yeah, I did. Actually, my tent's over there. You can see where I dug out the hole to make a flat spot. So
yeah, no, you got a lot of go for it in your 20s, that's for sure. But yeah, it just takes experience too. I mean, it isn't. You just have to make a few mistakes along the way. But now there's so much good information out there that you can shorten that learning curve just by reading or listening to podcasts. Or there's just a lot of good information where you can learn those lessons where you don't got to learn them like me and you the hard way and make a bunch of mistakes, because those are tough lessons to learn, and sometimes they're dangerous lessons to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And the coolest part about the era that you and I kind of grew up in, we were reading Mike Eastman's articles on things that he did and watching some of the videos that they put out where there were lessons you could learn from all the things that they did and how they grew up hunting that high country. And so there was so much that I got just like, it's crazy. I've told many people this. I was not an effective hunter until I read Hunting High Country Mule Deer. And after I read that book, I started killing animals. And it wasn't just mule deer. It taught me how to glass, and so I learned how to find elk, and I started killing animals that way. And it's just something that there are resources out there that can help you grow and help with the learning curve that never were there before.
Yep.
I grew up backpacking. That was something that we did. I remember church youth group trips where we went backpacking. I was the youngest one on the trip, and Dad was like, "Okay, well, you can just keep hiking until you get tired." And lo and behold, he and I were usually the first ones there because we just loved it so much. It's the stuff that you really enjoy. It gets into your blood, but we didn't have those resources. We didn't realize that hauling that can of soup was not exactly the lightest way to go in.
Right?
You didn't know Mountain House existed.
No, I was the same way. We hunted the Cascades, and we'd go with my dad and his brother, my uncle, and we'd go backpack into these spots way back in the Cascades for blacktails and then for elk. But we didn't know anything about backpack. It's just all learn as you go, and then moved to Montana in my 20s and just really started going for it. But that early stuff is definitely what planted the seed, which made me a backpack hunter. I just loved it. But we were definitely not intelligent about it. I mean, there wasn't that much information back then. Like you say, Mike Eastman's book, and that was a good resource, and the Eastman's magazine. But even nowadays, there's so many in-depth articles in the magazine, and the podcasts are so in-depth for finding information, and so you can just shorten that learning curve so much quicker than we did. You don't have to learn as many tough lessons.
And if in doubt, get on the forum.
Yeah, for sure.
The forum has a ton of good information.
Yeah, and a ton of good guys too. Yeah,
a lot of seasoned veterans who, and every time I get on, I learn something, and that's a cool thing to know that there are hunters there who I can learn from. So you reach this point where you think, oh man, my system's pretty dialed, and then you reach something where they're effective, and you're like, okay, this is cool. This is really something that I can enjoy and learn from. So I appreciate those guys and that word wisdom. The wisdom that they learned through experience. And I thought about making gear changes, and because of them, I either did or didn't.
Okay. Yep.
Which is really cool.
It is really cool.
It's a respect factor. You respect that you see what these guys are doing, what they're killing, and there's a lot you can learn from them.
Yep, and they have they can tell you and back up what they're saying and why it works and why it doesn't. And when I can make sense of it in my own head, that's when I can make a decision. If somebody just tells me to use something, I've got to research it on my own. Or so when people can give you a reason and back it up, then it seems to make sense to me, and then I'll make a change. So, okay, so I got one last question, then we got to wrap this thing up, Scott. But backpacks, what are you using for your pack?
All right, so I'll say rather than pick a specific brand or anything like that, there are a couple things that I look for. Number one is a hip belt that fits,
Mhm.
and then number two is functional shoulder lift. Being a tall guy, I have to have that functional shoulder
I bet that's tough for you for that tall frame. I bet you those packs are always short on you and they never lift the load off your shoulders.
If the shorter the frame pack, yes, but luckily there are a lot of 26 and 28-inch frames out there.
Okay.
And so those are the ones that I get functional shoulder lift out of. I actually was having a pack fitted one time and called in and told the guy my measurements and told him my torso measurement. He's like, dude, you're all leg, aren't you? I'm like, there's some truth to that. So the torso size, like, man, I'm making myself sound like Shrek, even though that's not true. But there's a lot of torso that I can get functional shoulder lift out of, so that's really important. And then for kind of a final piece is the ability to really make the shoulders, your harness fit correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so with some designs, you're not going to be able to move those around much, and I steer clear of them.
Yeah.
Just because that's just you have to be able to adjust width and your height, like in relation to that frame.
Yeah, be able to adjust the frame on the pack. Your fit of your pack is the most important feature of your pack, is to make sure that it fits you right.
Yep.
And you got to be able to adjust it. Yeah, it's got to have a good hip belt. And then, nowadays with these packs, there's multiple brands that are coming out with this meat shelf where you can carry the meat in between your pack bag and the frame. Mm-hmm. And I usually use like a soft frame that's got a piece of some sort of rigid plastic or rigid something in it that gives it a true form or a fit. But I love the meat shelf where you can separate the bag, put the meat in between the bag and the frame, and then cinch that bag to that frame. That is such a great design. And then, then you can usually disconnect your bag from your frame, and then you can wash your bag. There's nothing worse than sticking meat in your bag, and then pretty soon you've got a meat-smelling bag, and every time it rains, it smells like rotting death on your back. That's just the worst. Pretty soon you got to throw your bag out. You can't. And I've soaked them in bathtub. Soapy water, bleach, you try everything. But so that meat shelf, that's pretty important to me. I like that. And I like them light. I think that's where guys carry a lot of weight, is in their pack. And you may be trying to cut a pound on your pad or a pound on this, but on your pack, you can cut 3 or 4 pounds. I mean, now they build really good quality packs that are 3.5 pounds, 4 pounds that you can pack. Anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 cubic inches. And so I really try to cut my weight on my pack, but it's that line between comfort and between function and so, and between being light. And so it's this, everybody's got to find their own fit to where, it fits for them. And a lot of packs pack 30 to 50 pounds really well, but you stick more than that and they're uncomfortable. Well, I don't know about you, but if I stick 100 pounds in my pack, I'm uncomfortable no matter what I'm wearing, And so I'll go with those lighter weight packs, but it's got to be the right mix of it. I can't go too light or then it doesn't pack a load good enough. So it's that happy medium of around 4 pounds, meat shelf, and then good adjustability on that pack.
Yep, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
And I like the easy ability to clean.
Yep.
I had, this one's funny, I killed a yearling calf out of cow calf tag, so I killed this yearling calf, and I boned it out completely, so I was able to get it out in one trip. It was only a mile and a half back to my truck, so it wasn't too terrible, but that pack was heavy. But it got bloody. Like, there's just no two ways about it. That pack was bloody, and so I got all the meat out, got it hanging and cooling, and I bring this pack home, and what am I going to do with this? How am I going to clean it? And so I put it in the bathtub. And I use the shower handle, like it's detachable and has the hose. So I sprayed off that thing. I was spraying for about an hour to get all the blood out of that. So it was not a decision that I will repeat. I'll go use the pressure washer at the car wash next time.
Yeah, that's amazing what comes out of those things too. Just pine needles and blood, and then pretty soon you're done with your pack, and then you got to clean the dang bathtub next. It's just covered in stuff. So no, I'm with you. I've done that as well. So
easily cleaned is a nice feature if they have anything that does that. I know there are a few brands that have some different ways of dealing with that.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a bunch, Scott. Thanks for your partnership on this
Yes.
podcast. I really appreciate it. You've been working really hard on this thing and helping it grow. And so really fun to sit down with you and talk shop. And you're super knowledgeable, which is really fun to talk different gear and figure it out. So thanks a bunch, man.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. Another episode. So, really fun conversation with Scott. It's fun to talk about the type of gear you use and then to explain why you use that gear. There's all different types of gear that'll work. It's just comes down to preferences and your needs in the backcountry. So I just think it's really good when you can have an explanation behind what you use. So guys can get a real good feeling, what you use and why. So, really fun to put Scott on the mic there and to get an episode recorded. And definitely want to have them on again. I want to thank Zamberlan Boots for their sponsorship on the podcast. Again, those guys are making great boots, guys. Go check them out. Check out those new mid-height, lightweight hikers they got coming out. And over at the Eastmans office, we've got that new Eastmans Bow Hunting Journal issue 101 coming out. So make sure to check out that and the pack review in it. And gosh, with that, I'm just going to try to get in some bear hunting here. It's starting now. Weekends and evenings, I can be out chasing bears. So I haven't had any sightings yet. Still just a touch early, but I've got one spot that I really want to go hit. But it's almost like a two-guy spot because it's all the way down, all the way across this river and up the other side. And you just almost got to have somebody on that side that keeps an eye on the bears and kind of gives you hand signals. So I'm waiting my buddy Dan. He might be down this week, or maybe I can get my buddy Coulter to go out there with me. So excited to get after these bears and get some stalks under my belt and start getting that excitement. And then I think I mentioned it, but I am going to go on that Hawaii hunting adventure. So I'm just really psyched. Those new buddies I met in Hawaii are just great. And one Sean and Robin, and they've just been so nice to invite me out there and be able to hunt some of the species they have. So I'm going to get to hunt axis deer. I might get to hunt goats, which are like these Hawaiian ibex that have these curled horns on them. And then also pigs with my bow, and bring my family out there. So it's just going to be an awesome trip, and I'm really looking forward to it. So those guys told me to bring a lot of arrows, and you don't need to tell me twice. So I've been making sure, getting all my gear dialed in and getting ready for that trip. I'm gonna do it June 5th through June 14th, or somewhere June 6th to June 14th, I think, are my dates. So I'm just super excited. It's just a new experience in a different place. And so this has always kind of been a bucket list of mine. And after talking to Dan, and then just Dan Bakar, he's the one he goes to Hawaii every year and hunts those. He kind of got me hooked on it. But just talking to Sean and Robin, and such nice guys, and gave me the invite out there. It's just an opportunity that I can't pass up. So got my plane tickets bought, and I got the family all ready to go. And so I'm going to go out there and go hunt the tropical rainforest, or the tropical islands for these different species. So just so jacked on that. So got some really cool things coming up, and then just trying to draw some tags here and get some good adventure hunts planned for the fall, and running like crazy right now, and just really enjoy running nearly every evening, going on a run. And I just got permission below my house to run these ranch lands and these kind of canyons and coulees below my house, which is just an awesome place to go run. So I have no excuse. I should be out there every single day running, and I pretty much am. And then just shooting my bows quite a bit and getting those things all dialed in. Got them both shooting pretty good, or at least both the ones I'm going to hunt with this year shooting really good. And so just working on that, and boy, just enjoying life to the fullest. Getting my construction work done. I've got a couple big projects I'm trying to finish up, so working away on that. But hope all you guys are doing well. All you guys are working hard towards your goals. Thanks again, as always, for all the support with Eastman's Elevated, the Facebook page and the Instagram page, and then on iTunes, giving me reviews on there. I really appreciate it, guys. So till then, I'll check in with you guys next week.